Welcome! Today we're going to dive into a really fascinating shift in how we look at productivity. We're going to take a journey from just, watching people work to a powerful, modern system for making things better all the time. This is the story of how traditional work sampling grew up to become advanced activity analysis.
Here at Bodhi Unified Flow, our whole mission is to simplify complexity and amplify performance. And that's exactly what this explainer is designed to do, give you a clear, powerful way to see work in a completely new light.
All right, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the big problem, hidden inefficiency. Then, we'll look at the old-school solution, traditional work sampling. From there, we'll see how it evolved into activity analysis, break down what that really means, walk through its improvement cycle, and finally, check out the amazing outcomes you can get.
And by the time we're done, you'll get it. You'll know exactly why the old ways weren't enough. You'll be able to define activity analysis like a pro. You'll know its 7 key work categories. You can lay out the 5-step improvement cycle. And most importantly, you'll see how you can use this to make a real difference in your own work.
Okay, so let's jump right in with the biggest challenge every manager, every team lead has to deal with. How can you possibly tell the difference between people just being busy and people being truly productive? It's all about seeing beyond the motion to find the actual progress.
I mean, think about it for a second. In a standard 8-hour workday, for yourself or for your team, how much of that time is spent creating real value? You might be surprised. The answer is often way lower than we think.
This is especially true in really complex industries, like construction. You can walk onto a site and it looks like a beehive of activity. People are moving, machines are humming, but all that motion doesn't always equal progress. That gap, the one between looking busy and actually adding value, well, that's what we call hidden inefficiency.
So, to try and solve this problem, the industry came up with its first real data-driven tool. It was called traditional work sampling. It was a really important first step, a way to start managing what you measure.
So what is work sampling? At its core, it's a numbers game, a statistical method. Imagine you're taking random snapshots of a worksite all day long. If you take enough of those random pictures, you can start to build a pretty reliable understanding of how time is generally being spent.
But, and this is a big but, this method had a huge blind spot. It could tell you if someone was busy or idle, but it couldn't tell you what they were busy with, right? Were they installing a beam, or were they walking halfway across the site just to find a wrench? It saw the activity, but it totally missed the context. And that context, that's where the real opportunity is.
It was exactly that limitation that pushed for something better. We had to move beyond just busy versus idle. We needed to understand the kind of work being done. And that led to a much more powerful method, activity analysis, or what we call AA. And here's the key difference right here. Traditional sampling just asks, is work happening? Activity analysis asks a much smarter question, what kind of work is happening? It moves past that simple busy/idle label and breaks work down into specific meaningful categories, giving us data we can actually do something with.
Now, activity analysis, developed by groups like the Construction Industry Institute, is defined as a continuous process. That's super important. It's not a one-and-done audit. It's a whole system for measuring and, more importantly, for improving the amount of time people spend on what really matters, that hands-on, value-creating work we often call tool time.
So how does it get all this detail? Well, the real magic of activity analysis is in how it categorizes work. It breaks down literally everything a person does during the day into 7 specific buckets. And that gives us this incredibly clear picture of where time is actually going.
At the very top level, every single activity falls into one of 3 buckets. You've got direct work, or DW. This is the good stuff, the pure value. Then there's indirect work, IW. These are things you have to do, but they don't directly add value. And finally, wasted work, WW. This is just pure inefficiency.
And here they are, the 7 categories in detail. There's only one category for direct work. That's the hands-on tool time. Simple. Then there are 3 types of indirect work: getting set up, fetching tools, moving materials. Think of it like prepping vegetables before you cook. It's necessary, but it's not the cooking itself. And finally, 3 categories of pure wasted work: waiting around, unnecessary travel, and personal time. This is where progress just stops cold. Getting this level of detail, that's the superpower of AA.
Okay,
But collecting all this data is only half the battle, right? The real power of activity analysis comes from turning that data into action, and it does that through a continuous improvement cycle. It's a system that's literally designed for change.
And this cycle has 5 really clear steps. First, you plan your study. Then you sample. You actually go collect the data. Third, you analyze that data. You hunt for the root causes of all that wasted and indirect work. Fourth, you plan improvements to fix those problems. And finally, you implement those changes. And then you start the whole cycle over again to see if it worked. It's a perfect loop for getting better and better.
And that first step, planned study, it's not just a guess. It's actually grounded in some serious statistics. I won't bore you with the math, but formulas just like this one are used to figure out exactly how many observations you need to make sure your data is solid and actually represents what's happening. That's what gives this whole thing its credibility. See, this is what takes activity analysis from being just a measurement tool and turns it into a powerful engine for lean improvement. It makes sure the data you collect doesn't just die in a report somewhere, it actually drives real change on the ground.
So let's bring it all home. Let's look at the real payoff you get from working this way, this smarter way, and maybe take a little peek at where this whole field is headed next.
So, what's the bottom line? We've seen that activity analysis gives us that super detailed, granular data the old methods were missing. It gives us a simple language, DW, IW, and W, to talk about value versus waste. But most importantly, it doesn't just point out problems. That 5-step cycle gives us a repeatable recipe to solve them again and again, empowering managers to turn what they see into real savings and real efficiency.
And you know what? The story isn't over. This discipline is now evolving again into something called advanced activity analysis. We're talking about integrating things like AI, wearable sensors, and predictive models. This is going to give us even deeper, real-time insights, making our improvement efforts faster and smarter than we ever thought possible.
So that leaves us with one final very powerful question. A tool like this gives you the ability to see the hidden waste with perfect clarity. So the only question left is, what are you going to do to eliminate it? You now have the fundamental knowledge to look at any process, separate the value-adding direct work from the waste, and start that journey of continuous improvement in your own projects.
And everything we've talked about today is built on a solid foundation of real industry research. If you're curious and want to go deeper, these sources are a fantastic place to start. Thank you so much for joining us.